Welcome to the Building Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Dom Tarjanskis, and join us as we explore the world of construction. Each episode, we welcome a guest that shares career highlights and career advice, and hopefully inspires the next generation of construction professionals.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Building Your Career podcast. Today, I'm joined by Paul Mockler, who I've had the pleasure of working with previously. And I know he's someone who's very passionate about the construction industry and also promoting the construction industry to get either the younger generation in or indeed anyone who's looking to get into the construction industry as a career path. So I'll give the floor to you, Paul. I think first question is if you could tell everybody about your kind of current role and the company that you're working for at the moment.
Yeah, hi there. Nice to speak again, Dom. I'm Paul Mockler. I'm the operations manager for a company called Collab Construction, who are a new company in the construction industry. We were actually formed in February of this year. We were working for Drum Properties at the time with my previous employer, and that company went into liquidation. So what we've done is we've now joined Drum Property Group, who formed Collab Construction, and we're currently building a £20 million scheme where I am at the moment. I'm sat here in Edinburgh.
Oh, wow, nice. And what's your role within the business then? What are you kind of responsible for?
From my side, I'm head of all operations, so anything from any kind of risk assessments, method statements in our Hartlepool office, all the way to the full operation of everything that's happening on site. So I oversee everything that's currently happening on a day-to-day basis from the office all the way through to site.
Okay, brilliant. So if we could just go back in time to when you first started out your kind of career in construction, can you tell us a little bit more about how you first got involved in the industry and how you've kind of progressed through?
Yes, it's been a very strange kind of history from my side. I stumbled into construction. My pipeline dream, along with millions of other children at the time, and especially the boys and girls out there, my first career was in football, and unfortunately, I fell at one of the early hurdles and ended up working at Portakabin, who are obviously, I think a lot of people will have heard their name before. They're an offsite modular company, one of the big companies in the UK. So I started off there working in a machine shop, and then on the back of working in the machine shop, I then got into the fit out departments, which is on the back of it helped me get into the construction sector, because I moved from Portakabin to another modular build company called Modular, who also known as Blade Room, and we did a lot of healthcare facilities, which were modular facilities, and then went into data centers, which were a flat pack modular. That was probably my first sight of what I call proper construction. We were actually having to physically assemble things on site, and that's where my career started. I then moved from Blade Room to Tolent Construction, where that was pretty much where I dealt with everything as a project manager from start to finish on any project and the aftercare. Moved on to Modular Construction, where unfortunately the company went into liquidation, where I was a contracts manager, and hence why I'm now sat in an office in Edinburgh working for Collab Construction.
Okay, brilliant. And just for some of our listeners who perhaps are kind of new to the industry, could you give a little bit of your understanding of what modular construction means? Because some people might only know construction of, it's either concrete or it's made of timber. So can you give us a little bit of an understanding of what the modular industry is?
The modular industry is I think it's fantastic, to be honest, and that's me. But now working on the construction side, who's on the opposite side of the fence to modular. But modular is superb. What you do there is you will build you manufacture your building off-site. So you end up. So when I worked for Modular was a better example. We used to do a lot of theatre suites. So they'd end up being four modules all side by side in a factory. We'd fit out the full partitions, the full mechanical and electric, which is the M&E. We do the flooring, we do suspended ceilings, the doors, and then you would separate the modules, put them on the back of a wagon. Each module, one would go on the back of a wagon, transport them to site, and then you'd crane it back together. And you'd quite literally, in a lot of circumstances, plug and play. So you'd end up plugging the electrics together over the module joint. And within, I think, when was it module core off memory? I think it was about 6 to 8 weeks, we'd have a theatre up and running.
Wow. And I think it's one of those, it's kind of, with sustainability being big on the agenda at the moment, it's definitely an industry in and of itself currently. So it's definitely something that people can be doing research on, if they're looking to come into the industry, is, not just having a preconceived idea of, oh, it's just this way of building or this way of building.
You can say, in addition to that, Dom, as well, you've also got the, which are big in the construction industry, is the bathroom pods. And the bathroom pod is a modular building. It's a modular room is probably the technical word. It's a modular room that gets built and manufactured off site, and that full ensuite pod in general, the bathroom. So there'll be bathroom in there, there'll be tiles, there'll be showers, sinks, floorings complete. They would get dropped into the constructed building, and you then put your next floor on top, and that is another way of expediting the traditional construction programs.
Definitely, and it also saves a lot of time on site, and also is a lot more sustainable, and also saves a lot of money as well. So it's great that our listeners will be able to do their own research and go and watch a few YouTube videos if needs be. But I suppose the golden question is really, if you could give yourself one bit of advice to your younger self when first starting off in the construction industry, what would you kind of tell your younger self?
From my side, I would the only advice I'd give is listen to your wife. My wife, Claire, from a very young age, she's motivated me, and she kind of highlighted that with hard work, you'll reap your rewards. And that's something I've passed on to my two children. So I've got my eldest daughter, Tilly, who's now a teacher, and I've got my youngest daughter, Macy, who's now going through her GCSEs. That's what I've kind of instilled within the family, and that is to work hard and you will get your rewards. And that is what I've done throughout my career. And I'm sat here now at this moment in time in a very good position, and that is through hard work and dedication. You don't get these things by not putting in effort, and that's how I see things. So I see it through pure hard work and determination. Now, a lot of people might look at that as being hard work as physically doing things on a day-to-day basis on site, or it might be going to university or college to better your education. But if you work hard, you will get your reward.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that seems to be kind of an underlying theme in here, really, is that in the construction industry, you will be rewarded for what you put in and the hard work that you put in. It always does get noticed by people around you and your peers as well. And I think the one thing to add to that as well is just have that inquisitive mindset, ask people questions, always be looking at how to further your knowledge and kind of better yourself, really, because there's a lot of people out there that will be on site that you can ask the questions to that would be more than happy to share the information. I think, there's a bit of a preconceived idea that no one really wants to talk to you on site. They're all too busy. But, if you make time for people and say, oh, can I just grab you for 5 or 10 minutes on your lunch break, then people are more than happy to give you that information. And especially when you're first starting out, you need to be a little bit of a sponge, really, and just get as much of that information and knowledge absorbed as possible.
Yeah, I'd totally agree with you in what you're saying there, Dom. I was going to say, I'm half an hour ago just been sat down with my guys on site, my site team, and they're explaining things to me of how things are still put together. I know I don't look it, but I'm 47-year-old, and my guys are still talking to me, and they're still explaining certain aspects of the build and how it should be sequenced, and I'm listening to them, and they also listen to the bits of knowledge I have. And that's how it works. You work together as a team, and exactly what you said, you absorb the information it's given. That's what you need to do, and not just be the the one who thinks they know everything from a very early stage. You need to listen. You need to watch and listen to the guys on site who have been doing this work for many years, many generations of people working and doing these skills. So that's what you need to do, is listen.
Yeah, I think that's very, very important bit of advice as well, is that not everyone knows everything. So don't feel as though if you do start out that just because you don't know something, you can't ask the question. Because not everyone knows everything. So on a construction site, you'll have lots of different parties that are specialists in different things. So naturally, you've got to go out and ask the questions about, how things are built, how things are connected, how long it's going to take. But again, it's going back to asking those questions, having that inquisitive mindset, and more importantly, yeah, as you say, that the hard work in place as well. But sorry, carry on.
I was going to say, just to put it out there for the listeners, for the younger generation, I've sat in many a meeting where people are talking and everyone's sat there nodding their heads.
Yeah.
And you can see that they're all on the phone, on Google, trying to work out what has actually been talked about. So you need to ask the questions. And I think a lot of people say there's no such thing as a daft question. There certainly is, to a certain extent. But in general, asking asking why, from a child's perspective, a child will ask why on numerous occasions, and eventually they'll get their answer they're looking for, or they'll get the knowledge that they've been trying to seek. And I think that's what the younger generation in construction need to do, is ask why. If you ask why, and there's a lot of occasions where people can't answer, and they'll stand there and they'll think, "Oh, you've actually got a point here. Why do we do it that way? Why don't we do it this way?" And it brings in that the new kind of thinking all the time, and trying to continuously develop as an individual.
Are you a job seeker, tired of endlessly scrolling through job boards with no success? Has your job search hit a dead end? Well, we're here to tell you there's another way. Here at Quest Personnel, we offer a variety of free resources to help job seekers just like you. Our team of expert recruiters is here to help you through every step of the job search process, from CV writing to interview techniques. But that's not all. We also offer exclusive access to workshops, networking events, and other job roles that you simply won't find anywhere else. So what are you waiting for? Get in touch now on our website, questpersonnel.co.uk.
Brilliant, really brilliant point there. And kind of moving on from that, in terms of gaining that knowledge and experience early on, for people who are thinking maybe going down the degree education route and going to university, or maybe looking at different options that they can take, what do you see as the kind of a good route in to get into construction? Is there any particular degrees or any particular routes in? Or, have you got any suggestions about how people can get in, maybe if they, for whatever reason, can't attend university?
You've got that many different varieties of ways of getting into construction, and there's a lot of people who are very academic, and they will go through the university. They'll spend several years getting different degrees and working their way through the academic way. Me personally, I like people who've actually come to site, done the job, and worked through progression internally within a company. I'm myself, I'm not a big advocate all the time of you need to be fully qualified for this, that, and the other. I would rather bring somebody in who's hardworking and willing to listen, willing to work in with me, and willing to evolve around the way of a team thinking on most occasions. I would like to think that a lot of people would know the general rules in construction. So you need specific qualifications. So it's like a CSCS card. That's the kind of a very industry standard card that'll get you onto a construction site, which is a course, if you Google it and you look online, there's all the different variety of courses you can do on there. You can just have a general user's CSCS card, which is pretty much accepted on most construction sites. And then there's different types of degrees, where the ones that I work with are more the engineers, or the QSs, who end up going to university for 4 years as a rough guide. So I think the engineers end up going a little bit longer. And there's a variety of courses that are tailored to suit most people in the industry. So there's ones where there's a lot of theory work. There's certain courses that are a lot more academic. It's there and tailored to try and work with the individual, because we don't want in this industry to put everybody down one specific avenue and expect everyone to churn out the other end to be this perfect individual. People have different learning abilities.
And the one thing that I would say as well to go with that as well is if you are a little bit inquisitive about which path to take, you know, if you look at CIOB online, there's lots of free networking events, there's lots of free online events where you can just join for free on a Zoom meeting and maybe get a little bit of an understanding of what a project manager does, or the ins and outs of the business. Or you know, if you go on Eventbrite, there's lots of different construction related events that might be in your area as well, or even LinkedIn. So if you're just a little bit inquisitive but not sure, you know, which education route that you want to go down, or if it's right for you, then that's a really good way of just reaching out to people and going to some of these events or some of these online kind of webinars, where you can just learn a little bit more without the need to either chip in or say something yourself. So yeah, I think there's lots of free things out there where you can just get to grips with the industry before you decide or make up your mind. But I suppose in terms of final question, and I know it's something that you are passionate about in terms of nurturing talent and training people up, but what kind of advice would you give to maybe some of the more senior people who are asking the question how they can retain and nurture young talent and really get the best performance out of people when they are coming in fairly green or coming in without much experience?
From my side, I believe that you've got to work with these people and spend the time and develop the individual. And I think a lot of time in develop and supporting people and the younger generation is to try and assure them that there is a career within your company, and to try and show that the work that you're doing with different qualifications, different courses that you'll try and put them on to give them the career path that they're looking for. I feel as though them kind of aspects straight away lead to the individual staying with the company, and it's that time and development that they see the hierarchy at the company putting in that will, I believe, keep individuals. If an individual wants to come into a company, wants to what we call chase the money, then you're never going to keep them, because they're going to want to get to a level where you can't go any higher, and then they'll jump and end up working somewhere else. And you see it in the CVs when that happens. You see a lot of people who've got a lot of short time durations at companies, and I find that it is, you need to nurture the person. When you sit down and you interview them, explain what you're looking for out the individual, make sure that that's what you're going to get. That's the two-way communication at the early stages, and then with continuous product development and continuous development within your company, making sure that individuals are achieving targets that you agree and set out, which is what we do. We try and set them out yearly. We give ourselves an incentive of what we're trying to achieve, what kind of courses and qualifications do we need to achieve that. And I see that as being one of the key things that would keep people. Everyone is incentivized purely on money. We all are. That's why we come to work. There's very few people come to work for free. It doesn't happen that often. But you get paid a fair wage, but I think you need to look after the individual on top of that. You need to have, I think the management need to have people skills. I think a lot of people in general don't have that. But if you have people skills and you actually do what you should do, and that is you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you listen more than what you speak. That's what you need to do. And I think you touched on that at the very start of the podcast, is you were talking about where you've got to absorb information from a management perspective, and you're trying to get the best out of your staff. You need to absorb information that they portray to you, and you've got to look and see what's happening. And there's certain times you just got to be almost a father figure, and work with the younger generation. I think I've mentioned to you before, Don. We've got to. I believe, and I'm not saying statistically it's this case. We've got a shortfall in the industry, and we need the younger generation to come in. We've gone through 2-3 years now of a world that has been, from my perspective, been turned upside down, backside first with COVID and people working from home. I think there's a lot of that kind of happening behind the scenes still, and I think we need as an industry to get the younger generation away from working from home, get them into the construction industry, get them working out in the field, as we call it, and enjoying themselves.
Definitely, and I think you've touched on a really good point there as well, is if people feel part of the business itself and the growth strategy for the business, they're going to be so much more engaged in the project as well, because they can see the project as a wider business plan and strategy. Whereas if you just bring someone in and they're just focused on the day-to-day here and now, and they're not thinking of the future, then it can get a bit repetitive, or they can't see the bigger picture. So I completely agree with you there. And I think, one thing that I've seen and that we do ourselves with some of the graduates is, if before you get them in for interview, just a quick online survey, maybe if you're looking for characteristics of people who have got good communication skills or good team ethic skills, put a simple online survey together about when you had to demonstrate good communication skills, because what we get back from quite a lot of our graduates is that they were captains of football teams or captains of rugby teams. And that's just a really good icebreaker, a good talking point at interview stage as well. So, it would be definitely something that people could implement easily, or to have a list of questions that would ask for particular aspects of characteristics that people are looking for, because sometimes they don't always have that skill set that you can ask the questions on. So you're more asking about characteristics and personality traits there as well. So yeah, it's I think it was really, really good answer there, and I think there's some really tangible advice for anyone who wants to kind of be a part of the growth in construction. And Paul's someone that I know is very, very passionate about it as well. So yeah, Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, and stay in touch for future episodes. But Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem at all, Dom. Thank you very
All
much.
right,
Have a good
take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Building Your Career podcast. We hope you enjoyed hearing from our guest and learning about the different career paths available. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe so we can reach even more listeners. And if anyone wants any free CV advice or simply wants to know the options available to them, don't hesitate to get in touch.